In 2020, I had to face a very challenging moment in my life in which I was presented with the circumstances that I had to leave my own country and had to pack my entire life in 2 suitcases, one that I was filled almost with books. And I had to leave behind my cats, everything that I knew, my clothes, and moved to the UK. And it was not an easy adaptation for me. I struggled a lot to adjust. First with the language. I studied in English in Brazil and I thought that I was able to speak, but actually I couldn't speak when I came here. During the pandemic, and I had to be in the quarantine in a hotel before I could really be released and go to my family's house. And it was very challenging to do this change for me, for personal reasons, for emotional reasons, for the challenge that it is to leave everything that you know behind and restart from scratch. So in the midst of all of these things happening, I felt an urgent call that I needed to change. Something inside of me had to be readjusted, and I had to learn to cope with myself and my emotions in a different way. And I was already doing analysis for the past 5 years. I started doing therapy when I was 21. So I was already doing I was already doing Freudian therapy analysis for the past 5 years. And I even tried Lacanian therapy, which was not very interesting in the end for me. So I was already interested and invested in self-development and knowing a little bit more of myself, but something felt very incomplete. And as a synchronicity, I was one day feeling like I need help. I need to learn how to deal with myself in a different way. And in this moment, I found on Instagram an account that was talking about inner therapy, inner child therapy, and how to deal with your emotions from a holistic point of view. And that was my start pointing where things start changing for myself. And in the midst of all of this happening, it was also when I found Jung. And it was really interesting because I found Jung not through a library or through an institution per se. It was on Instagram where I found an account that was talking about Jungian psychology, spirituality, and symbols and mythology. And I was just, oh my gosh, that is so absolutely amazing. And I started engaging in all the courses that was available, and I was watching the lessons on a daily basis, and I was talking with everyone close to me about archetypes and mythology. And I was so happy because when I found Jungian approach, it was the first time that I understood that psychology had space for spirituality, and spirituality is not religious. It's not going to a church. So it was really liberating to experience that, and it was really beautiful. So it was very magic because it opened space for symbolic, because it opened space for playfulness again and reconnection with my inner life and my inner thoughts in a very different way. Because if you know a little bit about Freudian approach, is in a very simplified way. We are animals and we have our impulses that we either repress or we create mechanisms of adaptation through that. And a lot of the things is about we have our sexual impulses being denied or shamed, and we develop symptoms basically. And with Jung, it was more about, well, we are more than that. We are more than just animals. We also have a space for spirituality. This is in a very simple way, okay? Please don't. Let's know. This is not a video in which I'm explaining difficult concepts. I'm sharing my personal experience. And okay, and then at some point I decided that I liked Jung so much that I wanted to engage in a master program about Jungian and post-Jungian studies. And I was so excited to start my master because I love to study. Is the biggest passion of my life is to learn things. And so I was so happy that I found this program, because this is a very niche program that is only 2 universities in the world right now that offer that is Jungian. So I was so happy, And then I was like expecting fairy tales, mythology, and symbolical thinking. And the reality that I found in the university was very crashing with the version of Jung that I have learned online. It was very disappointing, very boring. And I even questioned myself if I wanted to continue the master because it was really tough, it was really boring, and it was really soulless. The professors, the colleagues, I didn't fit well in the program. Might be that other people find it very good for themselves, but for me it didn't work. I was really frustrated while studying the program. And I also questioned myself a lot if what I have studied and learned online in an informal way, it was actually true, it was actually accurate. And so it was like so difficult as well to deal with the expectation that I had that would be something that I would really enjoy, and actually it was something really boring that I felt that was really male oriented. There was a lot of the time discussing what was the difference between Freud and Jung, and for me the difference is very clear from the beginning. And I didn't understand why so much of the attention was focused in that more than actually explaining simple concepts about Jung and how he came about with his theory. How was his path to create that understanding about symbolical thinking and the inner thoughts. In the middle of the whole situation, I was thinking in giving up my master, but I thought that I have come so far in the process that I should continue it. So I almost gave up of my master program because I was so upset and frustrated with the difference between what I have learned about Jung in an excited, magical, and holistic way, to then face this other face of Jung that was described as a controversial, difficult personality, ego oriented, womanizer. I was just like, how is it possible that one person has so many different layers and aspects to it? And then I thought about the way that I'm reflecting on this dichotomy between the fun and holistic Jung and the academic version of Jung that I encounter. It was not working for me. I had to look deep inside of myself and think, who is Jung for me? And why it matters so much for me to finish this program. So having that in mind, I was thinking about what I really like to study, that is about mythology and about the feminine, about goddesses. So I found the work of female archaeologist. Her name is Marija Gimbutas. She was an American Lithuanian archaeologist. She was one of the first women to graduate during the Second World War. She was a leading expert in her field. Her work is really amazing. And Joseph Campbell talks about her work, so she was very well known in this myth kind of field of studies. And finding her work, it was what saved my master program, because then I decided to study what is the impact of the repression of the feminine aspect of the divine, of the goddess, into the society, the Western society that we live, that is male oriented, that is patriarchal, and if patriarchy has always been the way, or if there was different ways of living before. And what the research that Gimbutas did suggests is that before we had matrilinear, which is different from matriarchy, because it doesn't imply a hierarchy, but it implies a way of thinking that is matrilinear based, meaning a lot of women would have positions of power in spirituality. So there will be priestess. So it will be women that will be relevant and have a lot of power in politics, art, and that create a different type of environment. So all of that together saved my master, and I combined that with the notion that Jung had about anima, that is this psychic energy, this complementary version that lives inside of the mind of a man. So basically, this is a topic that I would explore in depth in another video. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about my experience and just get unstuck of my fear of showing up and speaking. So that's it. I hope you liked this video, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.